me today on our latest of our USFL podcast interview series. I have the pleasure to be joined by columnist Roy Johnson from AL.com. Roy has been writing several opinion columns and column pieces for the site, touching on the local flavor of what the USFL's impact is on the Birmingham and Alabama communities. Roy, thank you for joining me today in this latest edition of our interview series. I've been wanting to talk to you for a little bit. I really like your writing, and first off, we appreciate what you're doing, providing some local, on-the-ground level writings for us to take in.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. It's been a fascinating experience to watch this unfold almost over the last year. It really started last May with a phone call from a local city councilman to the USFL officials and to the Fox officials saying, hey, why not come to Birmingham? So to see it evolve from that one phone call to the entire league hosting this relaunch, new launch, whatever you want to call it, reincarnation of the USFL in Birmingham has been fascinating, and it'll be fascinating to see it unfold and frankly to see if it works. So we're right now we're close to the draft. You have the draft. We're gonna have players reporting in mid-March, and so it's on.
Yeah, it feels real now. That's something that I think people have realized this past week. A lot of the stuff that's dropped news-wise, the draft and particularly the jerseys now, it feels real. One thing that was a piece last week that did affect your local area of coverage and community is the championship game did have to be moved to Canton, Ohio, which to many, that's nice because it is the Hall of Fame's campus that they are going to be playing on. Unfortunately, that takes games away for yourself. However, we understood that the World Games were going to be an issue. Can you, for those that maybe haven't caught up to speak, can you explain what the kind of the crossover or potential time pressures there were between the World Games and the USFL at that time?
Sure. It's been pretty clear since about November that there was a potential loggerhead here between the USFL playoffs and the World Games opening ceremonies. If they were to play the games in Birmingham, there would have only been 4 days to prepare Protective Stadium, a brand new stadium for the World Games opening ceremonies. And the people from the World Games just didn't think that that was enough time. That is a huge production for them, several $1 million. It is their opening day. It is the gateway into this event that has been in the works for 7 years. So it almost really derailed conversations because they kind of stuck their, they put their foot down and said, no, that is not enough time for us. So I think everybody took a deep breath back in November and allowed the USFL to explore all of its options. There are 2 stadiums that are being used in Birmingham for the games. One is Legion Field, which is an historic field. I'll just say it that way. It's an old stadium, and it also holds about 70,000 people. So it's a huge facility, about 5 to 10 minutes from downtown. So it's conveniently located. That was also an option, but it became pretty clear that in order to make this game look good on television, it probably wasn't the best thing to hold it in a huge stadium. Protective seats about 45,000. So that would have been much more manageable. So what I understand is that over the course of time between the announcement and the announcement about the confirmation that the league was going to exist here in Birmingham and the announcement about the championship game being played, they just had to find a place to host it. And to go to a 25,000 seat stadium at where the Hall of Fame is was the best solution for the USFL, and one that was a compromise. I think all things being equal, they would have preferred to play the games in Birmingham, and Birmingham certainly city officials would have loved to have had the game here, but logistically it just didn't work because it was just too short of a turnover time between what would have been scheduled as a championship game and the vital opening ceremonies for these World Games.
Well, yeah, and from my understanding, you have well over 3,000 athletes that are going to be coming down for just the World Games. Completely dwarfs the USFL's personnel in perspective. And, I mean, 7 years preparations, I can completely understand why that is put into occurrence. Even more pressure, second time in its history that the World Games are going to be in the U.S. Birmingham gets to be in that spotlight. So completely understand. Just looking at this whole scenario here, What is the reaction been to the Canton announcement? I know that in your opinionated piece that you did recently on February 18th, there was, of course, you had discussions with some of the officials that were saying, we wish we could have had it, but we're still getting the regular season, and that agreements are still being reached on that point. Is there still a little? I mean, just from my understanding, is there still some disappointment, or are they still going to be happy with overall the world is still going to look at Birmingham for several months between two different sports organizations?
Oh, I don't think there's any question that given their druthers, they'd rather have the game in Birmingham.
Sure.
That's totally understandable, and I would expect them to be disappointed that the championship games were not here. I think on the flip side, everybody's taking the big picture view,
Okay.
and that the league, 360 players, several of the player personnel and coaches are going to be here. So for 10 weeks and more than 10 weeks, because the games, they report in mid-March, and training camps will start soon thereafter. So between March and July, you're going to have over 500 people staying in the city, spending money, eating at restaurants, going to nightclubs. I mean, it'll be a lot of generated. So I think everybody took a deep breath and decided, you know what? Let's just let's celebrate the fact that this opportunity has come to Birmingham and make the best of it.
That is a nice perspective on that. And I think that you're going to see a lot of local economy generate. It sounds like the numbers they're very much excited for, the tourism that is going to be churned up by this. And I think that is a high possibility. Obviously, players and coaches, personnel being there already, that helps a ton. Something that came out of your this same piece on February 18th, which, by the way, you can find this great write-up on AL.com, titled "On the Cusp of USFL's New Incarnation, Uncertainty Still Looms." One thing that was revealed, they slashed, or as you pointed out later, subsidized part of the hotel pricing and rates. I know that this was a big piece that people really had some backlash online about. Is there a reason why that you can understand why they went this route? I know that this was under the agreement with kind of the city and the hotels with the league. A lot of people were expecting that this was supposed to be the league would help at least like keep the housing, but that the hotels do get this money back in their pocket.
So I'm not quite sure what your question is. So let me try to be clear. There is $150 room rate that the USFL is going to pay the Sheraton, which is the host hotel, for up to 40,000 room nights. So that number is not changed. What originally emerged was that the league was going to charge the players that fee, the $150 a night. So if you do that math times 7, you're talking over $1,000. And then if the players are making $4,500 pre-tax per week, means they're probably making about $3,000. They're going to spend about $1,000 on hotel rooms. A lot of people didn't think that was fair. I was a little surprised when I saw that too. So the reaction to that, I think, spurred the league and Fox Sports to say, okay, we'll pay for half of it. The league is going to pay half of it and only charge the players $75 per night. That's a single occupancy. If they want to have a double occupancy, which they can with players on their own team, that cuts that down to a little bit over $37.50 a night. So that is what's happened. The room rate, what is being guaranteed to the Sheraton, the money that will, the tax money that will be generated is the same in the contract. It's just that the league is going to subsidize the players' costs at half. So they cut it from charging the players $150 per night to $75. And that doesn't begin until the regular season. The league is paying for all of the hotel room costs during training camp. And because at that point, they have to stay at the hotel. Players have a choice whether they want to stay at the Sheraton or someplace else during the regular season. But if they stay somewhere else, they're going to have to get tested every day, COVID test every day. And if they stay somewhere else, the city still generates that tax from that room night. And it's still, I believe it still counts towards the 37 to 40,000 room nights. So it's a little bit of a complicated math situation, but the contract rate of $150 is still in place. It's just that Fox and the USFL will subsidize it for the players and only charge them $75 per night.
You answered my question fully, even though I know it started out a little confuddled there. So I appreciate that, because that's been something people have been wanting to kind of. You can't get everything behind the scenes all the time, but like that's a piece where that we've been, as those people have been trying to get a little bit. So I appreciate that clarification there. But overall, it was nice to see that the league is at least listening a bit to criticisms of itself and kind of getting that change, if you will, under its belt. I did say that this, as I know I'm touching a lot on this specific piece you made on the 18th, and you've been touching as well. With any league, there is, of course, uncertainty with this. Birmingham is no stranger to a spring football league presence or a alternative football league presence. It's almost in its sports DNA at this point. It seems like that as we've gotten more announcements, this feels a little more concrete. But for yourself, what are some concerns you still have with this project that maybe need to be addressed or kept in the open here?
I think it's like any startup, whether it's a startup business or startup league, there are questions that are answered on paper, but once you open the door to your business, once they put the helmets on and the uniforms on, could be totally different. So there's always uncertainty with a startup, and this is a startup. It is a unique startup in that this incubation model that they're using, which helps mitigate costs. There's fewer travel costs, insurance costs. A lot of things are being mitigated by this incubator model. So, and it is, you are able to control things a bit more. I mean, let's face it, this is a TV play. This is not a traditional sports play where they are hoping to sell tickets fans so you can cheer for your team. They certainly want that, but this is a spring television play. So where the games are played in terms of what cities is really irrelevant to Fox and to NBC. So it's unique. So it's new. It's a new startup, which always has questions. And it's all about, I guess, whether they get the ratings that they expect. Will fans at $10 per ticket, will they come and just watch football? You have to be a football fan to just watch it. Not even the Stallions games will probably do well. But when the New Jersey Generals play Houston or somebody like that, will there still be people in the stands? I think there will be. There's a lot of outreach in order to try to make that happen. So it's just a matter of when they open the gates that first time, who will show up? And when they open the second, third, fourth, and fifth time, who will show up and what will the average attendance be? What will it look like on television? Where will athletes and coaches, will they spend money when they're out? Will they do all the things that are expected during this 10-week period? It's a pretty unique model. And in any startup, there's uncertainty.
Right. And we're talking you talk about game attendance. I mean, I know this is coming, but as we are recording right now, the full schedule still is to be dropped for sale. I know that, that the TV product's being pushed for the opening week, but there's plenty of folks that have asked myself or others, maybe even yourself, where it's like, so what about these other games? So that's going to have to come up in its own right. I imagine the Stallions games are doing great. It seems like the local draw, part nostalgic, part, new experience has been pretty positive for the Stallions at the very least as a opening for the market. Yeah,
it seemed to be a pretty smart play to essentially buy the trademarks for the USFL. Other than its last year and its venture into the fall, there was pretty much a positive view about the league, and particularly here in Birmingham. Spring football has always done well here. I think the biggest concern is that the city has been left at the altar so many times that there's a high level of skepticism about whether it would work or not. And it's totally understandable. I'm relatively new to Birmingham. I will have been here 8 years in April. I don't have the history that everyone else, a lot of people here have. I was here when the Iron was here, and how they just dropped in the middle of the season. They owe people money. That left a bad taste in people's mouths. So as this thing was evolving, there was a high level of justifiable skepticism about, here we go again. We're not going to get, screw me once, shame on me. Screw me twice. Shame on you, shame on me if they screw me twice. So not to mention 3, 4, or 5 times. So there's been a lot of concern and justifiable concern just based on the history of spring football in this city.
Did anyone, and this is just be for competition's sake, and also because Birmingham, before even the USFL was talking, prior when the XFL was still around, my understanding was officials were talking about trying to get the XFL to come to town at one point. During the USFL discussions, were there any talks about, say, competition being a factor in this?
Not really. There weren't really talks about that. This was strictly about the USFL coming to Birmingham and hosting all of its games here. So no, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of that chatter on social media and among that great. I mean, what I love about this is there's a lot of people who care about the USFL. Right. The fact that there's podcasts I heard from people on Twitter that I've never heard from before. I mean, there's a real passion. There's a bunch of folks who really care about the USFL out there, which I think works to its advantage and also justifies them spending the money to get those trademarks. So I think it's fascinating. I think it's great. And it'll be interesting to see how that interest plays out. But a lot of eyeballs will be on this experiment to see not just what happens to it this year, but beyond season one.
Truly is an experiment here. That's what I could say. And even just in spring football, that's something that's what has come out a lot. They aren't doing traditional in cities. So that's already a start to a completely different thing. The hub format is just, it has made some people have to grow and adapt into just, we're going to have to be used to that. So it's nice that at least, for your town right now, your city right now, they at least get their team. They at least get that support. That's right. Great. Do you know of any, I know there's been some investment initial talks. Is there anything that started along that line? It's pretty early, of course. So not saying
you mean investment meaning what?
Like that they, for example, the Stallions, are one of the teams that, though the league still owns it, they're looking for people to put money into it as like groups.
Yeah, I think it's way early for that. Right. I mean, they want to get through the first season and make sure that works and that you have products that have some value. So it's impossible to even say what the value of a franchise would be right now because they haven't snapped the ball once. So I think it's very, very preliminary to think about that. What they've talked about is a model similar to, I think it was major indoor soccer, one of the soccer leagues, yes, in which you have local investors, but they're not necessarily owners per se, and figure out what that model looks like as they have to have a venue, then they have to sell tickets. I mean, so it'll evolve. I don't think anybody's thinking about that right now in terms of season two, but there should be an opportunity for local investment, local ownership beyond this season. But right now they're just trying to make sure that they get to a championship game in season one.
Absolutely. Roy, are you going to be out there for the opening game?
I think the whole city's going to be out there for the opening game. Now, again, let's see what happens for the second, the third, and the fourth game. But yeah, it's going to be a thing. Absolutely. I mean, you have those opportunities in those moments, particularly in a city like Birmingham. This is a thing to have a game simulcast on both Fox and NBC from Birmingham, Alabama, at a brand new stadium that just opened just last fall, and I think a lot of people, everybody's going to be there, at least try to be there. So absolutely, I will be there for game one, God willing, and look forward to seeing this long conversation come to fruition.
I'm looking forward to, hopefully, if I can catch yourself. I know there's plenty have already said that too, but I'll be down there as well just for this show. It's going to be a great time.
Absolutely.
One last question I have for you before we go, and it'll just touch on people being there. Where are some places or things you like with the city for those that are coming to tour? It's that opening game. They're pumping up a lot, so there's going to be people from outside the city that'll be in your area.
I think people will be surprised at what Birmingham is today. It is a brand name city, not necessarily for positive reasons. It is certainly the cradle of the civil rights movement. In 1963, there was the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. There was the Children's Crusade, where the former head of the law enforcement, Bull Connor, who was a member of the Klan, turned fire hoses on school children. That's what most people know about Birmingham. I think people will be stunned at how much this city has changed and what they're going to see if they're in the downtown area is restaurants, retail, brand new facilities in terms of the stadium and the arena, within walking distance, within a 5-minute Uber ride of the stadium, 5 to 10 minutes. There are all kinds of restaurants. They should go to the Civil Rights Institute to see that. If they have some time, they should go to Montgomery and see the Museum of Peace and Policy there. I call it the Lynching Museum, which is one of the most emotional experiences that I've ever had. So I think the combination of culture and history and where it's evolved since the 1960s will surprise people. It's a beautiful city. There are a lot of great views from the mountain that kind of sits in the middle of the region. So I tell people to come hungry and come with your credit card and come with an open mind to try to take advantage of different parts of the city and not just to go out to eat and take advantage of the high-end places, but there's a lot of local ownership places that are great, and definitely take advantage of learning a little bit more about the movement. I mean, this is a city that changed America. This is a city that changed the world. People fly in from around the world to go to the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, so it should be a must visit. And I've told officials for the for the USFL, they should make sure all the players and coaches get over there at some point. And it's right near downtown. I mean, the 16th Street Baptist Church is 5 minutes away from the stadium. Wow. So there's no excuse for the people who come here not to go pay homage to the death of the 4 little girls. There were 2 other young boys who were killed at the same time. And the Civil Rights Institute is literally right across the street. And Land Park, the park where those fire hoses were turned on the school children, is right across the street. So It is all right there. It is 5 to 7 minutes from the stadium. So again, encourage people they're going to be surprised. This is not this is not your grandmama's Birmingham. It's not your grandfolks' Birmingham. This is an evolving city that is really excited to showcase itself to the world.
Well, I would say that's a primer I, at least, and others watching, should take home. I definitely will take home. And I think if I hadn't already been sold by it, I know I'm going to consider my weekend planned out partially thanks to yourself. And I appreciate that. Roy, thank you for sharing your time. Where can we find you on social media to keep up? Like I said, you're right. I love your writing. Please feel free to share where we can find your stuff.
Sure, absolutely. I've been in social media long enough to have pretty simple handles now. It's at Roy S.J. on both Twitter and Instagram. That is the best place to find me. And if you just Google Roy S. Johnson and AL.com, you'll find the site where all of my columns are listed. It's a fascinating time to be a journalist in America. This is a lot of fun to cover. Some of the things we cover today are a little bit tougher and a little bit more serious. So it's good to have this opportunity to cover something that is new, is innovative, and we'll all be sitting in the press box with our popcorn and seeing if it works.
I'm looking forward to that same thing as well. Maybe not press box, who knows, but I'll at least be at the game. Roy, thank you for your time. Pleasure talking with you, and maybe I'll cross paths you the 16th. Hope to see you there.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing you in Birmingham.
Hey guys, post-interview Zach here. Just wanted to add an extra nugget to the conversation on the hotel room rates. Again, we had a lot to talk about that in weeks prior to, of course, what we had with the USFL draft and other bits of news that have dropped. I did get a piece from the league. A league official gave me a bit of a nugget here that, quote, the USFL is spending more than $3 million to help subsidize the Sheraton hotel rooms for players, end quote. So they are stressing that they are trying to make this the best possible case for players in terms of what they are giving them for an avenue of opportunity for the USFL. I just wanted to add that piece to this, just to thought it was helpful for the conversation and, for you guys to draw your own conclusions on this. But for this case, though, again, I want to shout out and appreciate Roy Johnson for joining me for this conversation. We have plenty more content, more episodes, more interviews coming up for the USFL podcast. So stay tuned to this channel. Be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, and remember, hitting the bell builds morale. You aren't going to regret it. Trust me. Stick around for more great content, especially if you are curious about the USFL. Until next time, everyone, Zach Collins signing out for the USFL podcast. See you next time.